As negotiations over a U.S.-led peace plan in Ukraine continue, Russia has so far expressed support only for the original version of the plan. Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov has warned that the situation will be, quote, completely different if any revised text does not reflect the spirit of discussions between Presidents Trump and Putin. Russia and Ukraine exchanged massive volleys of drone and missile fire overnight despite the push for peace. Kyiv's mayor says 6 people were killed and 9 more wounded in Russian attacks on the Ukrainian capital.
Another night, another search and rescue operation. Firefighters are saving residents and extinguishing flames as Russian strikes hit 2 apartment buildings in Ukraine's capital overnight, part of a wave of strikes across the country. The latest show of strength from Moscow as Washington and Kyiv discuss a plan for peace. The Kremlin also claims to be advancing on the battlefield and wants to show it is winning the fight, tightening the screws on Kyiv. With these images released by the Ministry of Defense, Russia says it captured several frontline settlements in eastern Ukraine in recent weeks. Away from the fighting, there are growing signals from the U.S. and Ukraine that peace talks in Geneva have brought the 2 sides closer to a deal. A 28-point plan put forward by the Trump administration has now been revised and modified. Ukraine's president has welcomed the amendments with cautious optimism.
Today, our delegation returned from Geneva after negotiations with the American side and European partners, and now the list of necessary steps to end the war can become workable. As of now, after Geneva, there are fewer points, no longer 28 points, and a lot of the right things have been taken into account in this framework.
The White House is also projecting confidence, despite some remaining disagreements.
I don't want to detail sort of the technical talks that are happening right now, but there are just a couple, and we're confident that we'll be able to work through those.
But despite signs of progress on a roadmap to peace, these latest Russian strikes suggest ending the war may take far longer.
I spoke about this a short while ago with DW's Nick Conley in Kyiv. I asked him if these fresh attacks raised doubts about Russia's willingness to negotiate peace.
I think all along people here in Ukraine have been very skeptical about the true willingness from the Russian side to actually sit down and negotiate about something that is potentially workable for Ukraine, right? They've just been hearing the kind of maximalist demands from Moscow, that wish list that we saw in the 28 points, which is basically exactly the same thing as you heard from Vladimir Putin on the eve of his invasion back in 2022. As for that overnight attack, I think that doesn't necessarily have to mean that, you know, they're not up for any kind of deal if it's going to be capitulation. I think they're trying to pile on the pressure now and trying to use everything they have, use their resources, very kind of intensively in a way to just basically kind of beat Ukrainian resistance and kind of willingness to carry on down as much as they can to try and destroy the energy infrastructure and make this winter as unpleasant as possible for people in big cities like Kyiv. But I think the more important thing is just the kind of tone that you're hearing out of Moscow. You know, Sergey Lavrov, as we mentioned there, other people saying that basically anything that is not the full wish list with all the points is basically unacceptable. And there is a sense in Moscow that they are winning on the battlefield and that there's not really anything in it for them to stop this now. And this is mainly just about the blame game, about engaging with Donald Trump's efforts to not be blamed for the war carrying on, and hoping that Donald Trump will believe that it's Ukraine and not Russia that wants this war to continue.
Now, Europe and Ukraine have been reworking that original peace proposal brought forward by the U.S. with Russia. Do we know, Nick, what's come out of that reworking of the plan?
Well, it's all a bit abstract right now. There are no official notifications of how this changed, but it seems to be that the issue of territory and ceding bits of Ukrainian territory that is still held by Kyiv to Russia, that is the kind of main sticking point. Also, NATO is obviously a very controversial thing because Ukraine has put the ambition of joining NATO in its constitution. But I think we'll have to wait to see what exactly, you know, in the nitty-gritty has been agreed. The thing that's really struck me over the last few days is just quite how little it seems the American side has in terms of kind of principled positions. For them, it seems to be really about hurrying this through, getting some kind of deal, getting Donald Trump potentially a Nobel Peace Prize. And you have different parts of the US government, from Rubio to the Army Secretary, kind of giving slightly different kind of tones. So we don't know yet, but it seems that definitely from the Ukrainian perspective, handing over territory they still control is the red line.
Indeed, Russia is pressuring Ukraine to make territorial concessions. President Zelensky says Russia is pushing for a full withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the Donbass as a key condition of any peace deal. Let's take a closer look at that. After 4 years of war, Russia currently occupies just over 2/3 of the Donbass, as well as parts of the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions and the Crimean Peninsula. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signaled willingness to pull Russian troops out of about 450 square kilometers it controls in Ukraine's northeast in exchange for Ukraine withdrawing from 7,000 square kilometers in the Donbass. Analysts say it would take years for Russia to conquer that area at the present rate of fighting. Nick, is there really any room for debate for Ukraine when it comes to its borders?
I mean, if this were to be imposed somehow on Ukraine and, all help to be from the US were withdrawn in a way that would then force Zelensky to sign up on some kind of deal, that is going to create a political crisis here, not only among civilians, but also after hostilities with soldiers returning from the front lines who'll be asking, why are we giving them land that they haven't been able to capture themselves? And I think that is what this is about. That's where this Russian demand is coming from. It's not necessarily about towns like Konstantinivka. It's not about the actual territory. It is about creating a political crisis in this country wherein returning soldiers ask, what were we fighting for? Why have we given into this? And that would then create a kind of situation of weakness, political weakness, potentially Zelensky losing power, in which Russia can then come in and take even more territory at a greater rate than has been the case while Ukraine has a stable government. So I think it's important to look at this not just in terms of territory, but also in terms of the political fallout and how Russia could then, if it were to happen, take advantage of that.
That was Nick Connolly reporting there from Kyiv.